They called her the quiet wife, the perfect accessory, his greatest acquisition. They had no idea she was secretly building a bomb right under his gilded life. The flash of paparazzi bulbs was a drug, and Lennox Caldwell was hopelessly addicted. Standing under the gilded arches of the Grand Palais in Paris, his arm wrapped possessively around the waist of a woman who was not his wife, he felt invincible. The air, thick with expensive perfume and ambition, was his to breathe. He was a king in a foreign court, and his mistress, Jenna, was the glittering jewel on his arm. He had told his pregnant wife, Clarabelle, he was on a solo business retreat in Geneva, a necessary evil to close a deal. He had no idea the deal was a lie. The retreat was a fiction. And the woman he'd left behind in their quiet New York brownstone wasn't just waiting for him. She was waiting for the perfect moment to detonate the gilded, beautiful bomb she had built right under his feet. Lennox Caldwell didn't just walk into a room, he conquered it. At 38, he was the architect of his own universe, the CEO and founder of Caldwell Analytics, a data mining behemoth that had made him a billionaire before his 35th birthday. He was a man forged in the crucible of Wall Street ambition and Silicon Valley disruption. He wore his success like a bespoke suit, perfectly tailored, intimidating, and unapologetically expensive. His life was a curated collection of victories. The penthouse overlooking Central Park, the fleet of cars gleaming in his climate-controlled garage, and the wife who was, by all accounts, his greatest acquisition. Clarabelle Radcliffe was not like the other women in their circle. She wasn't a socialite who launched a brand, a philanthropist who chaired committees for clout, or a former model clinging to the vestiges of her youth. She was quiet, a stark contrast to the loud world he inhabited. Inherited wealth from the Radcliffe textile dynasty gave her a grace and security that new money like Lennox's could only emulate, never truly possess. She moved with an understated elegance, her intelligence a gentle, steady light rather than a blinding glare. Lennox had loved that about her. It was a perfect contrast to his own abrasive brilliance. She was his sanctuary, the calm port in his relentless storm of ambition. But lately, the sanctuary had started to feel like a museum. Their conversations, once vibrant and challenging, had dwindled to domestic logistics. Her pregnancy, now in its 5th month, should have been a source of shared joy. Instead, for Lennox, it had become another box ticked on the checklist of a successful life. It also made Clarabelle tired, more withdrawn. She had given up her position as a senior curator at the Met to focus on her health, and Lennox saw it as a retreat into a world he couldn't monetize or dominate. "What did you do today, darling?" he'd ask, loosening his tie as he strode into their cavernous home. "I was researching Renaissance weaving techniques," she might reply, her face illuminated by the glow of her laptop. "It's fascinating how they used sumac and indigo to create." "Fantastic," Lennox would cut in, already pouring himself a Macallan 25. "Robert Vance is trying to poach my head of AI. Can you believe the audacity?" Her world of art, history, and culture had become, in his mind, a series of quaint, unlucrative hobbies. She was nesting, he told himself. It was natural, but it was also boring. And Lennox Caldwell hated being bored. Jenna Thorne was the antidote to boredom. At 24, she was a supernova of ambition, an Instagram influencer whose currency was sculpted abs, strategically worn bikinis, and an unquenchable thirst for the limelight. Lennox had met her at a tech conference in Miami. She hadn't been a speaker, she'd been hired to add atmosphere at the VIP afterparty. She had approached him not with the deference he was used to, but with a bold, appraising look. She didn't care about his data algorithms, she cared about the gravitational pull of his wealth. Their affair was a shot of adrenaline. It was clandestine dinners at restaurants so new they hadn't been reviewed yet. It was expensive gifts, a Cartier bracelet here, a private jet to a Caribbean weekend there. It was the thrill of the illicit, the ego boost of being desired by a woman half his age, who represented the vibrant, vapid, and intoxicating pulse of modern celebrity. Jenna was everything Clarabelle wasn't, loud, demanding, and utterly transactional. With her, he wasn't a husband, he was a benefactor, a king. Paris Fashion Week is coming up, Jenna had purred one evening, scrolling through her phone as they lay in the silk sheets of a boutique hotel suite he kept for just these occasions. The Aura show is the one to get into. It's impossible. Everyone is dying to see what Olivier Dubois does next. Lennox had never heard of Aura or its designer. Consider it done, he'd said, the challenge invigorating him. Pulling strings was his favorite pastime. A few calls to his PR firm, a charitable donation to the Right Cultural Fund, and 2 front-row tickets were secured. It was a demonstration of his power, a gift he could lay at her feet. "I can't believe it, Lennox," she had shrieked, wrapping her arms around his neck. "We're going to be front row. Me. At Aura. I have to be in Geneva for a few days," he told Clarabelle that night, carefully avoiding her gaze as he packed a suitcase. "Finalizing the merger with the Swiss data firm. It's unavoidable." Clarabelle looked up from her book, her expression placid. A small, knowing sadness flickered in her eyes, a look he had become adept at ignoring. "Of course, Lennox. Work comes first. Will it be long?" 3-4 days at most, he said, the lie slipping out with practiced ease. "I'll be back before you know it. You just rest. Take care of yourself and our little one." He placed a perfunctory kiss on her forehead, the scent of her lavender and chamomile soap a stark contrast to the heady amber perfume that clung to him from his afternoon with Jenna. He felt a pang of something guilt, maybe, or a faint echo of the man he used to be, but he pushed it down. Geneva was the story. Paris was the reality, and reality was far more exciting. After he left, the silence of the brownstone settled around Clarabelle. For a moment, she allowed her placid mask to fall. Her hand went to her gently swelling stomach, a gesture both protective and resolute. She picked up her phone, not to track his flight to Geneva, but to open a secure messaging app. A new message popped up from a contact named OD. The final fitting was a success. "The collection is breathtaking. Are you ready for this, see?" Clarabelle's fingers flew across the screen, her response swift and certain. "He just left. He thinks he's going to Geneva. He has no idea he's flying straight into our theater. I was born ready, Olivier." She closed the app and opened another, this one a banking portal. She scrolled to a line item from 6 months ago, a wire transfer of $8 million, routed through a series of shell corporations before landing in the accounts of a struggling, visionary, but nearly bankrupt Parisian fashion house. The name of the recipient company was simple, Aura. Clarabelle Radcliffe, the quiet, pregnant wife with her quaint hobbies, closed her laptop. She had her own trip to prepare for, and unlike her husband, she had no reason to lie about her destination. She was going to Paris to check on her investment. The private jet descended through the Parisian clouds like a silver dart. Below, the city sprawled out, a tapestry of slate-gray roofs and shimmering lights. Jenna pressed her face to the window, capturing the descent for her 2 million Instagram followers. The caption was already drafted in her head: "Touchdown in the city of love with my mystery man. Paris PFW jet set life blessed." The mystery man conceit was Lennox's rule, a thin veil of discretion he insisted upon. It only added to her allure, she reasoned, making her followers speculate wildly. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she breathed, turning to Lennox. Lennox barely glanced out the window. He was on a call, his voice sharp and commanding. "No, the Q3 projections are soft. We need to be more aggressive in the emerging markets. Schedule a board meeting for Monday morning. I don't care that I'll be jet-lagged. Make it happen." He ended the call and finally offered Jenna a self-satisfied smile. "Sorry about that. The empire never sleeps." The line was meant to impress, and it did. To Jenna, his power was the most attractive thing about him. it was the key that unlocked this world for her. Their arrival was seamless. A black Mercedes S-Class whisked them from the private airfield at Le Bourget to the Hotel Plaza Athénée on the prestigious Avenue Montaigne. The lobby was a symphony of marble, crystal, and the hushed tones of the world's wealthiest citizens. Their suite was a marvel of Parisian opulence, with a balcony offering a picture-perfect view of the Eiffel Tower, which Jenna immediately began to exploit for a photo shoot. Cycling through a suitcase full of designer outfits Lennox had bought for her, she posed and preened. He watched her, a glass of champagne in hand, feeling a sense of profound satisfaction. This was life. This was success made manifest. He was providing this fantasy for her, and her adoration was his reward. "The Aura show is tomorrow night," she said, striking a pose in a crimson dress. "I need to look perfect. This is my chance to get noticed by the big brands, maybe even get a real campaign." "You'll be the most beautiful woman there," Lennox said, his voice a low murmur. "I'll make sure of it." Meanwhile, across the city in the less ostentatious but equally chic Saint-Germain-des-Prés district, Claribel Radcliffe was having a very different Parisian experience. She had arrived 2 days earlier on a commercial flight flying first class, but without the fanfare. She checked into a discreet 5-star boutique hotel, Le Bristol, under her maiden name. Her days were not filled with photo shoots and champagne, but with quiet, focused work. Her suite had been converted into a makeshift command center. Fabric swatches, lighting plots, and seating charts were spread across a grand mahogany table. Standing beside her was Olivier Dubois, the creative genius behind Aura. He was a man in his late 40s with kind, intense eyes and perpetually ink-stained fingers. He looked at Claribel not with the deference of an employee, but with the deep, abiding respect of a co-conspirator. "The final walk-through is tonight," he said, his French accent lending a musical quality to his words. "The music, the lights, the choreography. It is all coming together. It is our best work, Claribel. Your belief, it has unleashed everything." 6 months ago, Olivier had been on the verge of losing his atelier. The fashion world loved his artistry, but his lack of business acumen had left him vulnerable. The critics praised his vision, but the banks were calling in his loans. He had refused to compromise, to sell out to a major conglomerate that would have diluted his brand into a mass-market commodity. Then, Claribel had appeared. She hadn't come to him as a bored billionaire's wife looking for a vanity project. She had come with a meticulous business plan. She had studied his work, his finances, his potential. She saw what the conglomerates missed, that true luxury wasn't about logos, it was about soul. She invested not just her money, but her intellect. She helped him restructure the business, secure new suppliers, and plan a relaunch that would shake the industry. All on one condition: her involvement was to remain an absolute secret until she decided otherwise. She was the ghost in the machine, the silent partner whose name appeared on no official documents, only on the private trust that owned the company. "How are you feeling?" Olivier asked, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "All this stress, it cannot be good for the baby." Claribel placed a hand on her stomach. "He's calm," she said with a small smile. "I think he likes the hustle. He's a Radcliffe, after all. We build things." Her smile faded slightly. "Have you confirmed the seating?" Olivier nodded, tapping a specific spot on the digital chart projected onto the wall. "Row A, seats 12 and 13, as requested. Directly in the sightline of the main runway exit. They will have a perfect view." "And the photographers?" "The key ones have been briefed. They know something big is happening at the finale. They are expecting a surprise celebrity cameo, perhaps. They will be ready." "Good," Claribel said, her voice turning to steel. "Nothing can be left to chance." That evening, a twist of fate nearly unraveled the entire plan. Claribel and her best friend Penelope, a sharp-witted corporate lawyer who had flown in to support her, decided to have a quiet dinner at L'Avenue, a chic restaurant just a stone's throw from Lennox's hotel. They sat at a discreet table inside, enjoying the relative anonymity. As they were finishing their main course, the restaurant's doors swung open. A wave of murmurs and subtle glances swept through the room. Lennox Caldwell had arrived, and on his arm was Jenna Thorne, resplendent in a shimmering silver dress. Penelope's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "Clarabelle," she whispered, her eyes wide, "don't look now." But Clarabelle had already seen them. Her heart gave a painful lurch. It was one thing to know about the affair, to see pictures, to plan her revenge from a distance. It was another to see it in the flesh, the proprietary way he held Jenna's arm, the brilliant false smile he flashed at the maitre d', the way Jenna basked in the reflected glory of his presence. A wave of raw, primitive hurt washed over her, so potent it almost took her breath away. For a terrifying second, she thought Lennox saw her. His eyes swept the room, and their gazes almost met. But his attention was snagged by a rival tech CEO sitting near the front, and he moved towards him, all glad-handing charisma and competitive energy. Clarabelle ducked her head, her hair falling like a curtain to shield her face. "Let's go," she said, her voice tight. "Now." Penelope threw some euros on the table, and they slipped out a side entrance, melting into the Parisian night. As they walked briskly down the street, the cold air a balm on Clarabelle's burning cheeks, Penelope put a comforting arm around her. "Are you okay?" Clarabelle took a deep, shuddering breath, composing herself. The flicker of hurt was being rapidly replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Seeing him so arrogant and so oblivious had only strengthened her determination. "I'm fine," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "In fact, I'm better than fine. He just reminded me exactly why I'm doing this." She hailed a taxi, her posture once again erect and regal. The hunter had just gotten a glimpse of her prey, and it had only sharpened her appetite for the chase. The day of the Aura show dawned with an electric tension that hummed through Paris. For Jenna, it felt like her coronation day. She woke up to a breakfast of champagne and macarons delivered by a white-gloved butler. Lennox had already arranged for a team of a hair stylist and makeup artist to come to their suite. "I want to look iconic," Jenna instructed them, showing them a mood board on her iPad filled with images of supermodels and A-list actresses. "Chic, but also sexy. Effortless, but like I spent hours on it." Lennox watched the transformation from an armchair, fielding business calls and feeling a swelling pride. He was the great enabler, the man who made fantasy a reality. Jenna, preening in front of the mirror, was a testament to his influence. He'd even tried to leverage his status further. "My PR people are telling me our seats are A12 and 13, he'd said to Jenna earlier. "Good, but not the best. The center seats, 1 through 5, are usually for the Anna Winters of the world. I made a call to the event organizers, tried to get us moved up. It's a matter of respect." He had been uncharacteristically rebuffed. The response from Aura's team had been polite but firm. "The seating chart is final and has been personally approved by the designer. No exceptions." It was a minor annoyance, a small scratch on his otherwise perfect day, but it bothered him. Lennox Caldwell was not a man who was told no. "It doesn't matter, baby," Jenna said, sensing his irritation. "We're in the front row. That's all anyone will see in the pictures. And once they see my face, they won't be looking at anyone else." Her confidence was a balm to his ego. She was right, it was a minor detail. The important thing was being there, being seen. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Clarabelle. "Hope the meetings in Geneva are going well. Thinking of you. XO." A fresh wave of guilt, stronger this time, washed over him. He pictured her alone in New York, her life on hold while she waited for their baby, while he was here living this dazzling lie. He typed a quick reply, "Going great, very productive. Miss you." Be home soon. The lie tasted like acid. He pushed the feeling down again, harder this time. He would make it up to her. He would buy her a necklace, something exquisite. He'd be a better husband when he got back. But tonight was for him. Tonight was for Jenna. Across town, the atmosphere in Clarabelle's suite was one of quiet, focused intensity. There was no glam squad, no champagne. Clarabelle, dressed in simple black trousers and a silk blouse, stood before a full-length mirror. Penelope stood beside her, holding up a single garment. It was the final piece from the Aura collection, an item so secret it hadn't even been in the main studio. It was a coat, but to call it a coat was like calling the Sistine Chapel a painted ceiling. It was a masterpiece of midnight blue velvet, so dark it was almost black. The cut was architectural, with strong shoulders and a flowing line that was designed to drape elegantly over her pregnant form, accentuating it rather than hiding it. The lining was the true secret. It was woven from a silk thread infused with real silver, a technique Clarabelle had discovered in her hobby research, which shimmered with an ethereal, lunar glow whenever it caught the light. It was a garment that spoke of power, mystery, and unapologetic femininity. Olivier has outdone himself, Penelope breathed, her loyally composure momentarily forgotten. It's a suit of armor, Clarabelle. A beautiful, velvet suit of armor. Clarabelle ran her hand over the fabric. It's a statement, she corrected softly. It says, I am not a victim. I am the creator. I am the mother. And I am the boss. Olivier arrived, not with the frenetic energy of a designer on show day, but with a zen-like calm. He looked at Clarabelle in the coat and simply nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. Voila, he whispered. It is you. They went over the plan one last time. Olivier would walk the runway at the end of the show to take his bow, as was tradition. But then, he would signal for a microphone. He would speak. He would talk about the rebirth of his brand, about the secret visionary who made it possible. And then, he would introduce her. Clarabelle would step out from the wings, walk to the center of the runway, and take her place in the spotlight she had built for herself. Are you nervous? Olivier asked her. Clarabelle looked at her reflection. She saw the quiet wife Lennox had left behind, but she also saw the Radcliffe heiress, the shrewd investor, and the soon-to-be mother. They were all merging into one formidable woman. I'm not nervous, she said, her voice steady and clear. I'm ready. Let's go give them a show they'll never forget. As dusk fell over Paris, two cars made their way towards the Grand Palais. One was a gleaming Mercedes carrying a billionaire and his mistress, both buzzing with anticipation for the spectacle they were about to witness. The other was a discreet black Citroën carrying a pregnant wife and her designer, both filled with a quiet resolve for the spectacle they were about to create. The battle lines had been drawn. The stage was set. The audience was waiting. The interior of the Grand Palais had been transformed. Where once there was a vast, empty hall, Olivier Dubois had created an enchanted forest at midnight. Towering, skeletal trees sculpted from black steel reached towards the glass ceiling. The runway was a winding path of polished obsidian that snaked through the trees, and a low-hanging mist clung to the floor, lit from below with a soft blue light. The atmosphere was dramatic, ethereal, and intensely beautiful. It was a world away from the bright, sterile white runways of most shows. Lennox and Jenna found their seats, A12 and A13. Lennox's earlier annoyance returned as he saw that their position was not central, but off to the side, near the point where the models would exit the runway. They had a clear view, but it felt peripheral. He saw his rival, Robert Vance, seated dead center, and gave him a curt, professional nod. "Oh my God, Lennox, look," Jenna whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the front row. A-list actresses, rival designers, influential editor Sit was a who's who of the fashion world. She was breathing the same rarefied air. Her phone was already out, discreetly snapping photos. This is it. This is everything. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. A single, haunting cello note echoed through the space, and the show began. The first model emerged from the mist, wearing a gown that seemed woven from moonlight and shadows. The collection, titled Nocturne, was a masterpiece. It was a departure from Olivier's previous, more colorful work. This was darker, more powerful, more mature. There were tailored suits in charcoal gray with razor-sharp shoulders, flowing dresses in deep indigos and burgundies, and coats that wrapped the models like protective cocoons. The fabrics were exquisite, velvets, heavy silks, and a unique shimmering wool that seemed to drink the light. Even Lennox, whose knowledge of fashion was limited to price tags and brand recognition, was impressed. This wasn't just clothing, it was art. It was powerful. "He's a genius," he murmured, genuinely captivated. Jenna was mesmerized, her influencer brain calculating the viral potential of every single look. Each piece was a statement, a future magazine cover, a red carpet moment waiting to happen. This show was going to be legendary, and she was here witnessing it. The collection unfolded, look after stunning look. The music swelled, a symphony of strings and melancholic piano that perfectly matched the clothes. The audience was rapt, a sea of silent, upturned faces. This was more than a fashion show, it was a transcendent experience. The finale began. The models walked the runway one last time in a stunning procession, a river of dark, shimmering beauty flowing through the enchanted forest. As the last model disappeared into the mist, the crowd erupted into thunderous applause. The lights came up slightly. A spotlight found a lone figure emerging from the wings. It was Olivier Dubois. He looked overwhelmed, his eyes shining with tears as he took in the standing ovation. He walked the length of the runway, blowing kisses, his hands pressed to his heart. He was a man reborn, a visionary vindicated. He stopped at the head of the runway, right in front of the center seats. The applause began to die down as he held up a hand. An assistant rushed out and gave him a microphone. This was unusual. Designers took a bow, they didn't give speeches. A buzz of curiosity went through the room. Lennox leaned towards Jenna. "A bit dramatic, isn't it?" "Shoo," she said, utterly captivated. Olivier took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly but filled with passion. "Thank you," he began, his accent making the words sound even more sincere. "Thank you all for being here tonight. For a long time, I was lost. I had a vision, but I did not have the means. I had a voice, but no one was listening. The soul of Aura was fading." He paused, his eyes scanning the front row. "They say that in business, you must be ruthless. You must be loud. You must compromise. I was told to sell my name, to dilute my dream. I almost did." Another pause. He was a master showman, the entire room hung on his every word. "But then," he continued, his voice growing stronger, "an angel appeared. Not an angel with wings, but an angel with a business plan. An angel with a vision far greater than my own. Someone who saw the soul of this house and believed in it. Someone who invested not just money, but wisdom, strength, and a quiet, ferocious courage that I have never seen before." Lennox felt a flicker of unease. Who was this mystery backer? He glanced at Robert Vance, wondering if he had somehow swooped in and bought the brand. "For 6 months," Olivier went on, his voice ringing with emotion, "this person has been my partner, my strategist, and my inspiration. We decided that our work should speak for itself first. But tonight, on the night of our rebirth, it is time for the silence to end. It is time for the true visionary behind Aura to take her place in the light." Jenna was on the edge of her seat, her phone secretly recording. A surprise celebrity investor? Angelina Jolie? Beyoncé? The reveal would break the internet. Olivier's eyes found their section. His gaze seemed to lock directly onto Lennox. For a split second, Lennox felt a cold dread snake up his spine. It was impossible, a coincidence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Olivier's voice boomed through the Grand Palais, "please welcome the heart, the mind, and the soul of the new aura. The woman who made all of this possible. Ms. Clarabelle Radcliffe." The name hung in the air for a single, silent, heart-stopping second. Clarabelle Radcliffe. Lennox's brain failed to process it. It was a glitch, a misfire. The name was familiar, but the context was alien. It was like hearing his home address announced as the location of the next Olympics. It made no sense. He looked at Jenna, who had a confused frown on her face. "Radcliffe," she whispered. "Is that an actress?" And then, she emerged from the mist. Clarabelle stepped out from the exact spot where the models had exited, the spot directly in front of their seats. She was wearing the midnight blue velvet coat, a garment so powerful and elegant it commanded the attention of the entire room. It was unbuttoned, draped perfectly over her 5-month pregnant belly, which she was not hiding, but presenting as a symbol of her power. Her hair was styled in sleek, elegant waves. Her makeup was subtle but striking. She looked ethereal, regal, and absolutely formidable. A collective gasp went through the crowd, followed by a frantic explosion of camera flashes. The photographers, already prepped for a surprise, went into a frenzy. The sound was like a machine gun firing, the light, a strobing, blinding blitz. Lennox's world didn't just crumble, it vaporized. The blood drained from his face, leaving him with a clammy, ashen pallor. The champagne in his stomach turned to poison. The air in his lungs solidified. He could see Clarabelle's face, her expression serene, her eyes cold as diamonds. She wasn't looking at the crowd. She wasn't looking at the cameras. She was looking directly at him. In that one silent, devastating gaze, he saw it all. The lies, the betrayals, his condescension. Her quiet research, not into quaint hobbies, but into a multi-million-dollar power play. The trip to Geneva wasn't a secret from her. His entire life was an open book she had just set on fire for the world to read. Jenna finally understood. The name Radcliffe, Clarabelle's maiden name, clicked into place. The pregnant belly. The way the woman on the runway was staring at the man beside her. The color drained from her face too, but for a different reason. This wasn't a career-making moment, this was a catastrophe. She was not the star of a fairy tale, she was the tawdry, disposable villain in a revenge epic. She felt the eyes of everyone around them, the whispers starting to ripple through the rows. She wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Clarabelle walked slowly, gracefully to the center of the stage to join Olivier. He took her hand and held it up as if presenting a champion. The applause, hesitant at first, swelled into a roar. The industry insiders, the editors, the buyers, they understood. This wasn't just a family drama, it was a legendary business story, a brilliant, stealthy takeover. Olivier leaned into the mic. "The soul of Aura," he declared, and the room exploded again. Lennox was frozen, a statue of shame. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him, burning holes into his skin. He saw Robert Vance looking over, not with rivalry, but with a kind of morbid, fascinated pity. The carefully constructed edifice of his life, his power, his image had been demolished by one woman in a velvet coat. As Clarabelle and Olivier took their final bow and walked off the stage, the spell broke. Lennox shot to his feet, his mind screaming. He had to get to her. He had to talk to her, to explain, to... What? He didn't know. He just had to get to her. He pushed past a stunned Jenna and tried to rush towards the backstage entrance. Sir, you cannot come back here," a huge security guard materialized, blocking his path with a firm hand on his chest. "She's my wife," Lennox yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. Let me through. My instructions are clear, monsieur, the guard said, his face impassive. No one is permitted backstage. The instructions, of course, had come directly from Clarabelle. He was trapped, humiliated. He turned back to his seat, but Jenna was already gone, having scurried away into the crowd, her face hidden behind her hands. He was utterly, completely alone in a room full of people who were all staring at his public execution. The flashbulbs, once his favorite drug, were now the instruments of his torture, capturing his despair from every angle. He stumbled out of the Grand Palais and into the cold Parisian night. The name on everyone's lips was Aura. The face on every phone screen was Clarabelle's. And the story that was about to go viral across the globe was his spectacular, self-inflicted downfall. The king had not just been dethroned, he had been revealed as a fool in his own court. The fallout was not a slow burn, it was a digital wildfire. By the time Lennox stumbled back into the sterile silence of his suite at the Plaza Athénée, the story was already the #1 trending topic worldwide. Aura of Revenge. Clarabelle the Great. By Lennox. The headlines were brutal and brilliant. Forbes, not just revenge, it's a takeover, how Clarabelle Radcliffe turned heartbreak into a fashion empire. Vogue, the ultimate power move, inside Aura's shocking Paris reveal. The New York Post, billionaire's Paris tryst ends with wife on the runway and on the board. The internet, with its insatiable appetite for drama, devoured the story. Memes were already circulating, Lennox's shocked face next to Clarabelle's serene one, Jenna's horrified expression captioned with, "My face when I realize I'm the side character." The narrative was irresistible. The underestimated pregnant wife emerging as a brilliant, powerful strategist, while the cheating husband and his influencer mistress were publicly humiliated. Clarabelle was instantly canonized as a feminist icon, a patron saint of scorned women everywhere. Lennox was the villain, a caricature of masculine arrogance and infidelity. Jenna was a punchline. Lennox threw his phone across the room, where it clattered against a Louis XVI chair. He paced the suite like a caged animal. The champagne on ice seemed to be mocking him. He called Clarabelle's phone. It went straight to voicemail. He called a dozen more times, his desperation growing with each unanswered ring. He texted a frantic torrent of words. "Clarabelle, please. We need to talk. I can explain. That was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. I love you. You know I love you. Please don't do this. Clarabelle, answer me." The silence on her end was more damning than any angry response. It was the silence of complete and total control. She had said everything she needed to say on that runway. Jenna was experiencing her own private hell. She had fled to the hotel bathroom, locked the door, and was now watching her career disintegrate in real time. Her Instagram comments, once a stream of heart emojis and goals, had turned into a cesspool of vitriol. Home wrecker. Her coat probably costs more than your entire career. Her followers were abandoning her in droves. Brands that had sent her free products were posting statements clarifying they had no official relationship with her. An agency that had been courting her for a lucrative skincare campaign sent a curt email officially rescinding their offer. In a world where public perception was everything, she had become toxic overnight. Her fairy tale had ended, and there was no Prince Charming to save her. Lennox, unable to reach Clarabelle, did the only thing he knew how to do, he tried to regain control. "George, you need to fix this," Lennox roared into the phone. "Issue a statement. Something. Anything." There was a weary sigh on the other end of the line. "Then make one. You're a PR genius, for God's sake." "A PR genius can't spin a guillotine, Lennox," George said, his voice flat. "Disappear. I have a multi-billion-dollar company to run. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They're invoking the moral turpitude clause in your contract. They want to discuss your position as CEO. The words hit Lennox like a physical blow. His company, the thing he had built from nothing, was being threatened because of this, because of his arrogance, because he had underestimated his quiet, art-loving wife. The next 24 hours were a blur of humiliation. He had sent her a single, cold text, "I'll wire you the money we discussed. This is over." The Aura website had crashed from the traffic. Penelope was coordinating with a team of lawyers back in New York, preparing the initial divorce filings. Olivier was fielding calls from every major department store in the world, from Bergdorf Goodman to Harrods. Clarabelle was calm, composed, the eye of the hurricane she had created. The market, like the public, had passed its judgment. She finally looked at her phone, at the dozens of missed calls and frantic texts from Lennox. She read them, her face devoid of expression. Then, she opened a new message. It was not the response of a wounded wife. Now, it was time to settle the score. The brownstone he had once entered like a conquering hero felt like a mausoleum. Most of her personal belongings were gone, removed with a quiet efficiency that was as chilling as her runway reveal. A single sealed envelope lay on the grand entryway table. Lennox, unshaven and exhausted, tried to project an aura of control, but the illusion was shattered. The moral turpitude clause was their weapon, and the global humiliation of their CEO was the ammunition. The stock had dropped 17%. His personal drama had become a corporate liability. Instead, he was encouraged to take an indefinite leave of absence, effective immediately. He retained his shares, but his power, his identity, was gone. He walked out of the boardroom he had built, a king exiled from his own kingdom. The meeting Clarabelle had agreed to took place a week later, not in a stuffy lawyer's office, but on her own turf. When Lennox arrived, he was led not into a conference room, but into what was clearly going to be a design studio. The air smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Clarabelle was standing by the large windows, looking out over the Hudson River. She turned as he entered. She was in a simple cashmere sweater and maternity jeans. She looked soft, beautiful, and completely untouchable. "Clarabelle," he began, his voice hoarse. "I am so sorry. For everything. For Jenna, for Paris, for my lies. It was a sickness, an addiction to something new, something shallow. It meant nothing. You and our child. You are my world." She listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she gestured to one of the chairs. "Sit down, Lennox." He sat. "You say it meant nothing," she said, her voice calm and even. "That's not true," he pleaded. "I was a fool. I was blind. I love you." "The Lennox I loved wouldn't have been capable of this," she replied, a flicker of genuine sadness in her eyes. She walked over to the table and placed a folder in front of him. "These are the divorce terms. They are not negotiable." He opened the folder. She was establishing a trust for their child that he was to fund with a significant but not crippling portion of his liquid assets. With one condition. You will transfer 5% of your total shares into the baby's trust, effective immediately. I will act as the trustee. 5%. His company. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do you want a piece of the company?" Clarabelle finally allowed a small, cold smile to touch her lips. "Because you built that company on the idea of predicting human behavior. You analyze data to see what people will want, what they will do, who they are. It was checkmate." He sat there defeated, the papers in his hand feeling like a death certificate for the life he once knew. He saw the woman before him, the mother of his child, and realized he had never truly known her at all. He had seen a beautiful painting to hang on his wall and missed the fierce, brilliant artist who created it. "Is that all?" he asked, his voice hollow. He left her there in her empty new beginning and walked back into the wreckage of his own making. He had lost his throne, his pride, and his future, all because he had failed to see the queen standing right beside him. Years passed, not in a storm of revenge, but in the quiet, steady light of creation. Lennox, humbled and stripped of his empire, eventually found a different kind of life. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet sobriety. One sunny afternoon, sitting in Central Park, Lennox watched as Julian ran laughing towards his mother, who swept him up in a hug, her face radiant with a joy he now realized he had never truly given her. And in that quiet moment of acceptance, he knew she had earned every bit of it. What an incredible story of strategy, betrayal, and ultimate vindication. Let us know your unfiltered thoughts and theories in the comments section below. If you were captivated by this story of a woman reclaiming her power, show your support by giving this video a powerful like. Share it with anyone who loves a tale where the queen brilliantly outplays the king. And most importantly, if you love unforgettable stories that matter, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Our community is built on stories just like this, and you won't want to miss what we unravel next.